Good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Ben Blanchard, and he was the Secular Student Alliance at St. Cloud State for several years, and he has now served for a year at one of Foundation Beyond Belief's Pathfinders. If you don't know what Pathfinders is, you're about to learn. It's pretty fantastic. In doing so, he worked in 8 countries, 10 local NGOs, had an amazing life-changing experience, and got malaria. So now he will tell us all about his wonderful experience, and I'm sure all about his incredible sweater vest as well.
Wait, I thought I was only supposed to talk about sweater vests.
Oh, well, you do you.
Okay, so I have good news and I have bad news. Good news, I'm up here, yay! Bad news, my talk isn't loading, so instead we're just gonna look at screenshots of images from when I went on vacation last. Yeah? So my talk is normally called I Got Malaria and So Can You, Your Primer on Humanist Service. This time it was going to be putting the U in humanist service until someone pointed out that there's already a U. And then I was like, okay, so it'll be secular service. And then someone pointed out that there's a U in that too. I'm looking at you, Monette. No. So this is currently an unnamed talk. I'm so sorry to the people that will have to put this up on YouTube. And I'm Ben Sweatervest. Feel free to add me on Twitter right now. I'm hilarious. And so the volunteering work that I've worked primarily with was with the Pathfinders project, which is part of the Humanist Service Corps, which is part of Foundation Beyond Belief, which is part of the secular movement, of which the SSA is part of. I like saying when things are parts of things. It's one of my many, many skills. I also wear a lot of sweater vests. Now, Pathfinders Project was a revolutionary act in that it was people doing service work explicitly secularly, which is something that to that point had not been done on an international scale. Through this project, we worked with about 12 different organizations in 10 different countries, and we were doing what we do best. We were helping, but we were also largely bringing money. And when we do international service, we need to be very upfront about that. No matter how much skill you're donating, unless you have a high-level degree, more than anything else, you're bringing money and manpower. And that's good. It's just we need to be upfront that we aren't coming in to save them with anything besides a little bit of greenbacks. Now I know what you're saying. Ben, where did you go? No, I'll tell you. So I've worked in Cambodia and Uganda and Ghana and the Dominican Republic and Haiti and Ecuador and Colombia and Guatemala. And unfortunately, I can't go back to Uganda due to state order, but sad panda. You can still go there probably. And largely, as most volunteerism, as it's often called, work is done, it's working with clean water, education, human rights, and environmental work. Obviously very broad categories, but based off of the work that NGOs generally want help with, that's what we worked with. Because we came with skill sets, but we were giving what they were asking for. Because whenever we're doing international service, that's a big thing to remember. And I got to work with people accused of witchcraft, which is kind of funny, but it's also incredibly terrifying. I'm smiling because that way I don't cry. So in areas of rural northern Ghana and Nigeria and a couple of other countries, if you were here last year, you probably heard Leo Igwe speak, and you learned about women who are accused of witchcraft, which with as little as a dream, they are sentenced to murder. And if they happen to survive or run away quick enough, they get to live in concentration camps. I know, you laughed because you thought that the happy demeanor, no, the happy demeanor is a mask so I don't cry on stage because it's super depressing. Luckily, we have the ability to improve. We have the ability to provide them with the base supplies to be able to help. And specifically, you have the ability to do this. I know you're asking, but Ben, what can I do? Good news, you too can go to northern Ghana and help these women. More on that in a couple minutes. Unless the computer freezes, in which case we'll just be talking about this forever. Come on. Rainbows are fun. Okay, yeah, there we go. And so the work that I am now doing is through the Foundation of Beyond Belief Humanist Service Corps, whereas the Pathfinders project was a way of experiencing and a way of seeing where we can best help. Working in so many countries for a brief amount of time, we were able to recognize that the best way that as a humanist community that we can help, and based off of the input of our global partners, we recognize that a long-term investment makes a lot more sense, which is why instead of working in 10 countries at the same time, we'll be focusing our efforts on just that one location, which is very exciting because it's an immense area of growth. Because right now people are losing their rights and their lives, and it's something that we can be doing to help. Golly, that's serious. So instead, I'm going to talk about some of the fun things of doing service work. Yeah! Look at me! I was teaching science to children in Uganda. Now this is at Kasese Humanist Primary School. Kasese is a really unique place because in Uganda, by state law, all elementary and high schools have to be religious. They are graded on either Christian or Islam coursework. There is no separation of church and state. That is a wonderful thing about a lot of Western countries. Unfortunately, this country does not have that. Kasese Humanist Primary School is a humanist school. Their motto is, "With science, we can progress." And they are doing a revolutionary act of teaching cross-religious curriculum. So they teach some Christianity, some Islam, some Baha'i, some pagan, some local religious beliefs, and they treat them as these are cultural aspects, and these are things that people believe. You don't have to believe them. They also teach to the curriculum enough that the kids can pass the test, because if they don't pass the religious test, then they have to repeat the grade, which is very disappointing if you're particularly good in science, but you don't believe Christianity. And you don't want to answer on question number 7, this is actually question number 7, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Maybe you don't want to answer that. Maybe in this case we make that minor. Just write it, it's fine. It's a very disappointing section. Golly. That was supposed to be the happy one. No, that's not happy either. Now let's say you don't want to go to such a religious theocracy, which is unfortunately common in Northern Africa. Maybe you would like to do service work in Cambodia. Now we'll get to Cambodia in a moment, but look at how happy we are. We're teaching them English. Now, for those who don't know, Cambodia is a very complicated issue. The Khmer Rouge was the communist takeover of Cambodia, where they killed off all intellectuals and government leaders. Essentially, if you had a college degree, you were killed. The goal was to go back to a more naturalistic form of living where everyone was a farmer. That didn't work out because most people who lived in cities didn't know how to be farmers. They didn't have enough supplies for everyone to be a farmer, and it's one of the greatest massacres known to date. Millions of people died within a couple months. That being said, the area is beautiful, has a very rich cultural heritage. Most of the largest temples in the world are in Cambodia, and as a result, it has a thriving tourist culture. I initially had very big concerns about a country being primarily for tourists, but we need to worry about the here and now and what the people want. What the people want is to be able to feed their families, and the best way for them to be able to feed their families is for them to be taxi drivers that speak English, for them to be tour guides that speak English, for them to be salesmen that speak English, because it allows it so that they can actually afford to feed their family, which as a farmer they can't. We worked with an organization called Big Yellow House, which is a fun name. They were part hotel chain, and all of the profits from the hotel went to help schools, and then they also trained people in the hotels how to be in hospitality. Most hotels there, because there are so many Cambodians looking for jobs, they only take people if you've already worked 5-10 years in the hotel service, which means it's very hard to start on that. And so they provide that launching pad. They teach people how to be in hospitality, and they teach children skills that will enable them to provide for their family. It's a complicated issue, but it's a local NGO, and they really do good work. That good work happens to be teaching English, which was complicated, but it's something that you guys could do right now. Isn't that exciting? You can teach English. You can also teach in Uganda, because they say Humanist Primary School is consistently looking for American volunteers. American volunteers have a zest for science that unfortunately is not necessarily common in that culture, and that has to do with the difference in educational system, to where Americans, we are very lucky to have a very critical thought in education, rather than most developing nations, which is mostly rote memorization. So when we come in, we're very excited, and all of the kids are really excited to talk to the white people, and so they do their homework, where before they wouldn't necessarily. So we're a fun treat. Obviously, once again, a very complicated social issue, to the fact that we're coming in to be a treat, but when we look at the here and now, we're able to help children get excited about education, and I think that's really important. Also, you can buy one of the uniforms for yourself. Look at that, it's blue and yellow. It's a good color scheme. Now, environmental work is obviously very important. When I was working in Colombia with Mission Gaia, which is once again an organization you can work with. I don't know if you're seeing the theme here. These are organizations that you can work with. We did a lot of really excellent environmental work. Colombia right now is facing a really unique issue, to where due to drug wars, the majority of people who lived in rural farming areas were thrown out, and different people have moved back who don't necessarily know how to care for the land. Along with that, the people who have come back are much more willing to allow tourists to come and ecotourism. They're more willing to sell their land to Americans who build hostels. And unfortunately, the Americans who are building hostels don't care about the environment. They want to see the environment. They want to encourage other people to see the environment, but they also want to drink bottles of beer and throw out plastic chip bags. And so a culture that has no way to be prepared for the level of pollution and litter is facing that. Mission Gaia has the focus of making it so that the people can do that, teaching them that we need to be taking this one-on-one. We need to make sure all of the hostels are dealing with their trash, because this is an amazing part of the world. We need to be protecting it. Mission Gaia. Now I know what you're saying. Ben, I'm so happy and excited. This hasn't been depressing at all. I'm as happy as she is. Right? Yeah? She was so excited to have her picture taken. Aren't you guys excited to be doing volunteer work? Yeah. Now, the nice thing about doing volunteer work as a whole is that you get to consume something new. Consume. In this case, he's eating a grasshopper for the first time. Grasshoppers are actually delicious. I know several people who are otherwise vegans except for insects, because of reasons. But if you deep fry them, they taste just like barbecued potato chips, which is insane, but it's so good, and it's full of protein, it's very healthy. It's one of the only ways that we can actually sustain ourselves if we want to continue to eat meat. Not really. Like, they deep fry the grasshopper, and I thought it tasted like barbecue. They didn't add any seasoning for me, but like, it's protein. Like, protein has taste. I'm using my biology degree so much today. So you get to consume something. Yeah, you see a theme building. And you get to build as a community. Now, this isn't a group building track, so we're talking one-on-one as a person. It's getting disturbing the amount that within the atheist community, the people that want to reject the community, who very distinctly say, the whole point of being an atheist is that we don't have a community. And they say this in community groups on Facebook. And they say this as part of the Reddit community. Now, I have a whole talk, it's called The Atheist Allergy, about how, you guys know what I'm talking about, how as atheists we have rejected theism. And that's fine, but as a result we reject everything that resembles theism. We reject communities that are strong and church-like because they're church-like, without actually looking on the basis that, hey, people are forming communities because we're humans, we're animals. Animals form communities. This is a thing that happens. They come together, they share, they build. We shouldn't reject something just because it looks like something we don't like. And we too can build a community. This community was, not the greatest example, was a Buddhist community. Buddhism is a religion, that's fair. But they knew we were very anti-theistic, and they accepted us because why not? Because the point of community is that you accept and you build and you grow, even if you don't always agree. Now, I'm not saying that we should be entirely inclusive, I'm not saying that we shouldn't fix problematic behaviors, but that we need to throw away the concept that community is bad. Because we have a community. If you're in this room, you're part of the community. I'm getting snaps from an organizer. Yay, community. And do you know what we'll do? Who's looking for the pun? We'll build bridges. Oh, someone just died of awful pun. Now, an important part of being an activist is that you recognize that nothing is in a vacuum. We exist in context, we exist with other people, and a big part of that means that we have to work with people even if they're not the people we would most likely identify with. That means that when I'm doing activism work, I have to work with people that I disagree with, I have to work with people that I dislike, and I have to work with people who I would otherwise like, except for this one minor thing, like them being Catholic and thinking that I shouldn't get married. So that's a whole other thing, but ultimately we have to be working to build bridges. Because more than anything else, we need to have that connection. If we've learned anything from the gay rights movement in the last century, it's that people are more likely to give you rights and respect if they can see people that they love in you. And is that sucky and unfair? Yes. Yes, it is. That's life. Life is sucky and unfair. We move on to the next slide. Now, this is not a bridge comment. This is just a reminder that I got dysentery also. And as we were walking across this bridge to a temple, I threw up, and it was awful. Just days I threw up. It was... So whenever we do something like this, we take risks. Life is a risk. Whenever we do any sort of service work, when you go volunteer at the dog shelter on your weekends, you take the risk that you might get bit. Why do we do this? We do this because, what was that?
Because puppies are awesome.
Because puppies are awesome, because we think that what we're doing is important. More than that, we think that what we do is important. Not that helping puppies or running SSA cons or taking notes is important, but things that we do have meaning. A lot of very prominent psychologists have thought that what gives us energy is meaning. Not lust, not drive, but meaning. And so when we have meaning, everything becomes so much easier. We have a thirst for life. And one of the best ways to do that is through doing service work. Come in. Not a problem. I did say that we were going to shame people as they come in. Shame! Wait, you're not even going to stay?
I'm sorry. Keep talking.
You sit down. Now, why else would you do service work? So these are monks that I worked with. I was able to, or in exchange for being given the privilege of teaching children English, we also taught the monks English. I would have taught the monks English anyway, because in order to better communicate with the people who come to visit, in order to, well, especially the Americans who come to visit, because they want to learn about Buddhism, they need to know English. When we came in, only 2 people out of about 250 spoke English. But that's not what they wanted. And so one of the big reasons that we do service work is to help people get what they want and what they need. In this case, it was English. For Mission Gaia, in Colombia, it was to have an environment. In Castese Humanist Primary School, it was so that they could have the education they deserve. But we need to remember that it's not about giving them what we want them to have, because that's not what service is about. It's about allowing it so they can get what they want and what they need, not what we think they want or need. I know I'm riding on this one hard. Once again, I think that everything that we do should be to make a better community. whether it be a secular community, whether it be a community that your friend group, HANA, whether it be the community on the world at large. We need to be working to build a better community. One of the most important things that I've ever experienced in my life was in a school in Guatemala. In this school, they only held classes 4 hours every day, but the entire community got together and paid to have it built, because the rest of the day, that's where the mothers come and do their laundry, because it's the only building that has running water. They could afford to give it to them for the kids, and as a result, everyone got to use it. They all put in a little bit to be able to share as a whole. It's such a basic concept that we so often throw away. We think that people need to deserve it, rather than being just given this basic right of having basic needs. We think that people should have to earn basic things. That's ridiculous. We have communities. We need to be supporting them. And the amazing thing about service work is no matter what you do, whether you work in homeless shelters, animal shelter, women's shelters, shelters, that's a thing, a shelter. You are enabling the community to thrive because you're seeing a need that needs to be improved and you're improving it. It's just a really basic thing that we so often throw away, and we need to not do that. Questions? Yes. Yes.
Closer to home, I mean, this is exotic stuff, obviously. Where secular people do service, obviously the service needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Then there's an aspect of it of showing up as a secular person.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like you pay a lot of attention here to getting credit as being a secular person doing these things. On a smaller scale, I think in the U.S., some do and some don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think that one of the big things to remember is that when we are looking for credit for the secular community, I think we should, and I think it's unfair that we should have to do that, but we shouldn't be doing that not as a person, but as a group. Now, as a group, I think all groups should be in the Volunteer Beyond Belief network, the Foundation Beyond Belief, where you can get together and do secular stuff with your work and be very visible about it. I personally think that an individual shouldn't be taking on that role, because individuals are human and can very easily be corrupted. The same is not necessarily true for groups. And we've seen over and over again that a single person will do excellent things and then either fall off the earth, get discredited, and bad things happen, and then it's used as a counterexample. But I do think being very visible about it is important for groups. On an individual, for an individual, I don't think that that should be the goal. I think it should be coming from a place of improving the community, and that we are looking for credit to improve the community. That being said, you get to your own values, so.
Where can people find out more about Pathfinders?
I mean, I've heard that there's a table outside and that there's someone wearing a sweater vest. But if you happen to be on the internet right now, you can go to foundationbeyondbelief.com or pathfindersproject.com. And if you'd like to do service work abroad, you would go and look at individual volunteering on foundationbeyondbelief.com. We have so many volunteers that what they do is make it so that other people can be volunteers. It's meta volunteers. I'm being told to stop, so I will immediately stop.